Thank you, Chairman, and welcome, Mr. Bhatt. I'm sure you are a wonderful gentleman, and Senator Hickenlooper insists that Colorado is a wonderful state, but you do have a terrible disadvantage, which is that you have no coast, or at least you have it in several million years. And I'm from Rhode Island, which is a coastal state, and I don't know how well you know Rhode Island, but we have areas like Bristol, which are now part of our state, that will soon become islands due to sea level rise based on the existing projections by our Coastal Resources Management Council and by NOAA. There's a part of Warwick called Warwick Neck that is going to become Warwick Neck Island. The town of Warren, Rhode Island, is working very hard on a plan to deal with the loss of some of its major business areas along the coast and moving uphill to a different road as its central business area. It's a very deliberate and well-thought-through plan. If you're trying to get away from Warren and Bristol in a flood, you get onto Route 114, which takes you through Barrington, but Route 114 is a huge flood risk itself. So an evacuation route from a flood that is itself flooded is not a very good situation. We already have fire and rescue equipment having to be positioned on Warwick Neck so that when it floods temporarily in big storms, those people are not separated from the emergency services that they may need. So these coastal problems that we face as we look at sea level rise, which are slow and deliberate and to some degree inevitable, but are accelerated by storms and storm surge and huge prodigious rains that pour down, and it creates a real risk for us. So you will be implementing the Resilience Act that we called Protect, that I fought very hard for in the bill. The formula grants are out, but the competitive grant program still needs to be developed. And I need your assurance that as you develop the competitive grant program, the particular and urgent needs of coastal communities that are at risk of losing vital transportation access are put at the very forefront of the department's concerns.
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate your concern, and from my time in Delaware dealing with Hurricane Irene, Superstorm Sandy, I think looking at some of the inundation maps where basically east of Route 1, just because of the topography and the lack of, just the lack of any kind of elevation, we had to develop massive plans around evacuation. How do we get people out? How do we provision them when they're there? What do we do with debris? So I completely understand and appreciate that challenge for coastal states, and my commitment, if I'm confirmed, will be to work very diligently on this issue, because it's one that I think we've been looking at for a while, but it's a mix of adaptation, some hardening, but it's a big challenge.
And an important piece of this is the planning that small, particularly coastal communities, have to do. If you're New York City, you can take care of yourself. If you're Boston, you can take care of yourself. If you're Charlestown, Rhode Island, it can be pretty difficult to figure out what's going to happen. You've got Moody's, your bond insurer, banging on your door saying, what are you going to do about this? Because there's a foreseeable loss of property value and therefore municipal revenue when the valuable coastal properties are flooded out or become uninsurable or become unmortgageable. And to have the resources, if you're a small coastal community, to figure out what you need to do and get the studies right is really vital, and not every coastal community has that capacity. So I hope that you'll pay a particular attention to small coastal communities seeking planning assistance in dealing with this risk.
Absolutely, Senator. And I had mentioned Prime Hook is a classic example. We have a causeway that connected them, and it was already flooding during high tides, and so I just remember them talking about their school bus, how their school bus couldn't get back in, not even during a hurricane, just like just a high tide.
The other thing I want to work with you on is low-carbon transportation materials. We both have a law in place and a bipartisan law that's been reintroduced by myself and Senator Collins, and it's to give composites and other types of materials a fair chance. I mean, I love iron and steel, but if you can do just as well with composites and it lasts longer, support to pay the upfront difference could be very helpful. But it's also important that the highway standards allow for those alternatives, because if the only standards that an engineer can go to the book and find are iron and steel standards, you've just put a huge obstacle in front of these alternatives. So I hope we can work our way through that as well. And I've gone beyond my time, so I'll just leave it there.